Recently, while scrolling the Nintendo eShop, I found a good deal for the first 6 Final Fantasy games in a pixel remake. I've played 7 and had a great time, and I played through about half of 9 before I got busy and forgot about it, but I hadn't yet played a single game before Final Fantasy 7. I've wanted to get into the series more, but I haven't really had the time to do it up until now. So I bought the games and started with the first one, Final Fantasy 1. I wasn't going into this expecting the best RPG I've ever played, but considering how much of a classic it is, there must be something to like about it, right? So, join me as I try to answer the question of whether the first Final Fantasy game still holds up today. And thank you, truly, for watching. Final Fantasy 1 was made by Square in 1987, and it was directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi. It would go on to inspire many RPGs into the future, and led to the Final Fantasy series. I really can't put it into words the impact this game had on the gaming world. Today, I will not be playing that 1987 version, however, mostly because the original Final Fantasy is very broken and coated on duct tape. Seriously, half the spells in the game don't even work. So I personally thought that the remake, which fixes these issues, would be a better representation of the developer's intent, while still having the same gameplay and story. Also, the remaster is the game I bought in the collection, so... Anyways, let's get into the game. The game starts by giving you the ability to choose the class of your party members, which for a game that came out in 1987 is a lot of freedom to be given to the player, especially at the start of the game. Each class has their own special abilities and weapons they can equip. You can't even use all the classes in one playthrough. This adds a lot of replayability to the game, which I think is especially important in older titles considering that they are usually much shorter than the games today. However, not all classes are made equally, but I'll get into that much later in the video. After choosing our party members, we find ourselves in the first major town of the game, Cornelia, where the king's daughter has been kidnapped by the evil Garland and has been brought to the Shrine of Chaos. The king recognizes our party as the Warriors of Light, who bear the 4 crystals that will be used to stop darkness or something. Basically, he tells us to go save his daughter, and in return, he shall build a bridge that we need to continue on our quest. On our way to the Shrine of Chaos, we get to have our first few enemy encounters. The combat in this game is surprisingly entertaining. Even in the original version of the game, you get to see your party members do their attacks and such, which was pretty innovative for when this game came out. Along with the attacking enemies normally, we also get black and white magic. Black is usually for offensive, and white is usually for support. I say usually for a reason, but once again, I'll get back to that later. Anyways, we beat up Garland and save the princess. In return, the king builds a bridge that will allow us to continue. This game is very open, which once again is not what I was expecting from a game made in 1987. The main quest of the game is to defeat the 4 fiends that are plaguing the land, and to bring light to the 4 elemental crystals. But there are very few times in this game where it feels like you are being directed anywhere in particular specifically. You have to figure out where to go and what to do by talking to the various NPCs around towns, which you just find the towns by wandering around the place. This can sometimes be frustrating, especially when you have no idea where to go because you didn't talk to the one NPC in the corner of this random area, but I prefer it over some of the yellow paint and big arrows that plague modern game design. It makes you feel a lot more like you're on your own adventure, you know? This world is full of interesting places to visit, like its many dungeons or this town where all the people speak an unknown and forgotten language. And, Elfhelm. I think you can guess who lives in Elfhelm. Imagine if we named towns like that in the real world, like, hey, sorry, I won't be able to go to work tomorrow. I'm on vacation to Humanburg. Anyways, throughout the game, we can also get various vehicles, like the boat, and more importantly, the airship. Getting the airship might honestly be one of the most satisfying parts of the entire game. You go from having to walk around these large areas and fight a bunch of annoying enemies to zooming around on your fast airship. At this point, the airship also opens a lot of other areas to explore. This game also heavily rewards exploration. Many of the dungeons in this game contain useful items and powerful weapons in their many chests. In fact, it's far more worth it to just do a little dungeon looting than actually buy anything from the shops, except for the magic spells, which is, for some reason, the only way you can get them. There also is this whole optional side quest, which you can change your party's classes to be stronger versions of the classes they already had. And speaking of party classes, I can finally get to what I've been alluding to this entire video: the balancing. I'm just going to say it straight and say the balancing in this game is completely awful. First off, the Knight and Monk are easily the two best classes in the entire game, and it's not even close. Both of these guys were doing a lot more damage than both of the mages combined the entire game. Speaking of mages, like I said earlier, the only way for these guys to get spells is to buy them in towns. The Black Mage is alright. Most of his spells are weaker than the attacks from the Knight or Monk, but he has some decent AoE attacks that make life just easier. But the White Mage, on the other hand, is awful. First off, besides for some spells that do damage to undead enemies and one spell at the end of the game, the White Mage has no attacking spells, only healing and supporting. But here's the thing, for the first half of the game, the potions you buy from shops heal way more than any of his spells and are more versatile since they can be used by any party member. Even the best supporting spells, like Haste and Tempered, can't be used by the White Mage. They get used by the Black Mage instead. I didn't use the Thief or Red Mage in this playthrough, but from what I've heard, the Thief is absolutely hot garbage. This all leads to most boss fights just being everyone buffing the heck out of my Knight, and he just whacks the bad guy alone until they die. In the original, this was all even worse, since the game was super bugged and required a lot more grinding. However, in RPGs, many people prefer to play them for the story over the gameplay, so I'll get into that next. The story of this game is competent. It's not anything mind-blowing, but just for the game to have a story for when it came out was pretty remarkable. On your quest to beat the 4 fiends, you end up meeting a few interesting characters. There were even a few lines of dialogues that got a chuckle out of me. I would mention how cliche the whole 4 elemental crystals thing is, but after doing some research, I found that this is one of, if not the first games to do this type of crystal collecting story, which really goes to show how influential this game is. I'd like to mention that while doing research for this segment, Copilot gave me the answer that the first game to use 4 elemental crystals in its main plot were Super Mario RPG and the 7 Stars, which, given the title, I think you can know that is obviously not true. I just find this to be really funny, because, AI sucks. After we defeat the 4 fiends and restore the crystals, we learn that all of these problems that have been cursing the world have been caused by a time loop, and that we need to go back to the Shrine of Chaos, go back in time, and uproot the problem. The final dungeon is surprisingly brutal, especially considering the rest of the game's dungeons so far. At the bottom, we once again face Garland, who we defeated at the beginning of the game, who after being defeated was sent by the fiends back in time, so that way he could send them back to the future, creating a time loop paradox that lets him live forever. The final battle seems very challenging at first, but to be honest, Garland is kind of a pushover once you know what you're doing. The credits roll. Final Fantasy I, while having its fault, was still a shockingly fun time. It has several remakes if you're interested in old RPGs. I'd really recommend giving it a shot. The game isn't perfect, but throughout the game, I kept seeing what I'd like to consider the skeleton of what would become a very good game in the future. It just needs a little bit more to it. I plan to play the rest of the Final Fantasy games, and maybe I'll make videos about them too. With that, thank you for watching this far into the video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.